this time on psychic investigators. When a young man goes missing, police suspect foul play.
There's no reason for him to run away.
They have a suspect, but no body.
The family was in shock.
A detective turns to a psychic for help. Her visions reveal an unimaginable evil.
And now she's telling me there are multiple victims.
Can a psychic help the police capture one of the worst killers in U.S. history? John Wayne Gacy. Des Plaines, Illinois. A byway for commuters who make the daily trek into nearby Chicago. A far cry from the crime and violence of the big city. Or so it seemed. On December 11th, 1978, high school student Robert Piest is finishing his shift at a local drugstore. His mother arrives to pick him up. Robert asks her to wait a few minutes while he goes to the parking lot at the back of the building to meet a man about a summer job. He never returns. The family files a missing persons report that night. It lands on the desk of Chief of Detectives Joe Kozensak.
The statement was made that this young man was going to talk to another unknown person about some summer work. Here's a young man who all of a sudden disappears. The family was in shock.
Robert, a student at West Main High School, is popular, a gymnast, an aspiring photographer.
Rob was a good guy. He was funny, creative. He was a good friend.
He's doing well in school. He's social. He's a great kid. There's no reason for him to run away.
And when you start adding these things together, there's more to this than just a young man who walked away from his part-time job.
3 days go by, and still no sign of Robert.
All of the speculation as to what could have happened started coming out. It was evident to all of us that something was very, very wrong. Posters were put out all over the place. We were all calling each other all the time. Is there any word? Is there any word? We were anxious.
It was a really emotional time because a lot of these people were in fear of being harmed or murdered, that maybe they would be the victim.
With no other lead, they turned their attention to the man Robert told his mother he was going to meet.
He was actually a person who was, in fact, brought into this drugstore by the owners to do certain kinds of remodeling work.
All police have is the contractor's first name and a last name they're not sure how to spell.
The Chicago Police Department had, at that time, an alpha file. If you didn't know how to spell someone's name, but you kind of had the pronunciation of it, you could look in this file. This is not computers. I'm talking about literally taking your little fingers and going through the cards. Based on that information, they actually came up with a name. His name was John Wayne Gacy.
At first glance, John Wayne Gacy is a model citizen. He belongs to local service clubs. He entertains children as Pogo the Clown. But he also has a dark side. Gacy has a prior arrest in Iowa for a violent sexual assault.
And when we heard that, the hair literally stood up on the back of our necks. While I was attempting to get a search warrant, other officers were interviewing Gacy. Once he found out we did not have a search warrant, he got real belligerent. He denied ever talking or seeing Robert. We felt he wasn't telling us the truth.
24 hours later, the search warrant comes through.
On our first search warrant, we found IDs that belonged to other young men. Jewelry and belt buckles and different things that didn't belong to Gacy. And we found all kinds of other types of sexually orientated materials, books and magazines and things. Even though we had these items, there was nothing there that would allow us to arrest Gacy. We had to cut him loose. That was painful for me because I felt that this man was responsible for the disappearance of this young man.
But tracing the IDs will take time. And with Robert missing 5 days, the detective is at a dead end. A fellow officer suggests something radical. A psychic.
I decided I would ask the police chief what he thought about that idea. And he said, don't advertise it, but go ahead and do it.
Kozensak makes an appointment with the psychic in nearby Rolling Meadows for that very night. Carol Broman, now deceased, was a well-respected psychic investigator who worked with police on many cases.
She would get feelings by touching either a person or an object. She would pick up energy. She also called it her little voice.
I mean, it was like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was kind of an eerie night.
We had a room upstairs where my mom did her readings. She called it her library. Joe had gone into the room with my mom and shut the door. I noticed that he was very, very nervous, very guarded.
I sat down in this little room with her all her candles burning. She said, did you bring anything that belonged to this young man?
The detective has brought Robert's camera in the hopes the psychic can use it to locate him. He has also brought a tape recorder to document the session.
She took the camera into her hands, and immediately you could tell that she was feeling something extraordinary.
I'm getting sick to my stomach. There's some type of torture. He isn't alive.
The psychic said this young man is dead. And I was like, I mean, the chill just ran through me from my head to my feet.
There's a construction site affiliated with this man. He asked him to come back or to meet him somewhere. He was tricked somehow. The kid doesn't think he's dead. He's got marks where he was tied.
A construction site. Could the psychic be talking about John Wayne Gacy? But it's what she sees next that shakes the detective to his core.
This guy is sick. I mean, he's really sick. You're going to find 6 or 7 others in the same place. They're buried.
I was dealing with this one missing persons case, and now she's telling me there's more. She said there are multiple victims.
When Joe had left that night and my mom came out of the room, she just was very upset. She was very white. She said that she had felt sick to her stomach.
And the part that really got to me was when she said, Robert doesn't know he's dead. And that bothered me a lot. I envisioned Robert wandering off in the Netherlands someplace.
The detective has more questions than answers. But his biggest problem? How is he going to explain all this to his men?
I try to maintain my cop state of mind because you don't want to be duped. How do you tell this information to your investigators? You know, do you go back to the police station and say, I just saw a psychic, and here's what she said?
Kozenczak tells his men the psychic's information came from an anonymous tip. The investigation into John Wayne Gacy kicks into high gear.
Gacy was under 24-hour-a-day surveillance by a team of officers. And then you had policemen who were interviewing former employees of Gacy's.
Police discover some of these employees are missing, and they make a crucial link. These names are among the ID cards seized in their first search.
Here's 3 or 4 or 5 ex-employees of Gacy's mysteriously disappeared.
Could they be dead? Kozenczak remembers the psychic's visions. Multiple bodies buried.
That's when it just started to come together for us.
Meanwhile, Gacy knows he's being watched. Far from being afraid, he seems to enjoy the attention. He even invites the police to dinner in his house. One officer notes a strange smell coming from the basement. 48 hours later, the round-the-clock surveillance pays off when Gacy slips up.
The surveillance team that was following Gacy watched him sell some marijuana to a gas station attendant. So they grabbed him.
With Gacy in custody and armed with evidence of more missing men, the police obtain a second search warrant. They believe the key to the missing men may lie in the house with the strange smell. They start in the basement.
I went to the house, and I opened the door, and I stood in the dark, right by the trap door. And 2 Cook County Sheriff's evidence technicians jumped down into this trap door. Within minutes, they said, Lieutenant, we've got 3 bodies down here. And I was like, oh my God, it's true. Everything's true.
What they find is a house of horrors. Multiple bodies buried in the basement. Every day, the body count rises. In custody, Gacy provides the grim details of how he tortured his victims. His weapon of choice, a garrote, which he used to strangle them. Of the 27 bodies unearthed, some still have rope around their neck. The multiple bodies, the M.O. It seems the psychic was right about it all.
It fit very, very closely to what Carol said. And the amazing thing is, we didn't know this. She told us.
News of the gruesome discovery spreads like wildfire.
It turned into a media circus. There were news people there from all over the world.
When we were taking the bodies out of Gacy's house, it was surreal. How can there be so many bodies in this house and nobody know it?
Todd Wessel covers the story for the local paper.
As the day unfolded and the week unfolded, the horror just became almost unimaginable.
The police examine the bodies, but Robert Piest is not among them.
It was obvious to us that the condition of the bodies that were underneath this house had been there a long, long time. We still had not accomplished finding Robert's body.
Impressed by Carol Broman's revelations, the police ask her to help locate Robert's body. But she can't see where he is. The police are at another dead end.
Everybody believed that they were going to find him, and they didn't.
There was a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty in the minds of the community. People wondered what happened to Robert. Where was he? Could he still be alive?
The police are sure Piest is dead. But where is his body?
As each day went by, it got worse and worse because there was no answer, nothing for us to hang on to. It was very important they find the body.
The police and the family finally get their answer. John Wayne Gacy admits to killing Robert Piest and tells how he disposed of the body.
Gacy told us that he had thrown Robert's body into a river.
He says he threw the body off the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River. The area is searched, but with no luck. By now, the current could have taken Piest's body anywhere. And there's another problem.
It was just hard to observe anything in the river because the river was frozen. We had to wait.
But it's been 6 weeks since their son disappeared, and the family doesn't want to wait. Elizabeth Piest reads an article in Reader's Digest about a psychic whose specialty is finding missing bodies. Dorothy Allison, who is now deceased.
Dorothy Allison was quite prominent as a psychic on the East Coast and was in fact involved with the FBI working on a case. Robert's mother asked me to contact Dorothy Allison to see if she might come to Chicago to help search for her son's body.
Detective Kozensak contacts the psychic at her home in Nutley, New Jersey.
She immediately started telling me where Robert's body was located at. I was very skeptical.
Your victim's body is located near a place where there's a strong smell of petroleum oil. I'm seeing a motel. The Manor Motel. I'm seeing the body near a cemetery. The sign says Evergreen.
Now that was good. And this woman was sitting in New Jersey, and she's telling me about a Manor Motel.
Oil. The Manor Motel. Evergreen Cemetery. Obscure landmarks near where Gacy dumped the body. Intrigued, the detective asks the psychic to come in person to zero in on the location. In March, Detective Kozensak drives Dorothy Allison to the area. The psychic first guides them off the highway.
As you come off the interstate, there are storage tanks, and if you roll your windows down, I mean, you're like inundated with the smell of petroleum.
The psychic directs him to take another exit.
The exit you get off is a Manor Motel. And off to my left was a cemetery. And there was a great big marble slab in the front of this place, and it said Evergreen.
The psychic asks the detective to stop the car and points to an area along the river where she believes the body will be found. But with the water still frozen, the search must wait. Dorothy Allison returns to New Jersey on another case, but not before one last prediction.
She wrote something down on this piece of paper, and she said, "This is the day you're going to find Robert and I stuck it in my folder, closed it, put it in a desk drawer, and essentially forgot about it.
The spring thaw, and the search for Robert Piest can begin again. Out of the blue, the detective gets a phone call.
It was the sheriff of Grundy County, and he said, "Lieutenant, you better get down here. We found a body floating along the shore of the river." The location where Robert's body had finally been found was just about a quarter mile away from the cemetery.
The psychic not only predicted where Robert would be found, but also when. Detective Kozensak remembers the note.
And it said April 9th. What she predicted in January actually came true to the letter on April 9th of 1979.
Dorothy Allison's last prediction bears out. The body of Robert Piest can finally be returned to his loved ones.
That was an answer. After all of that time, that was at least something.
At that point, I got sad. He really was gone. And Gacy really did kill him.
More questions are answered during John Wayne Gacy's sensational trial, and the psychic's visions prove eerily accurate. On the night of December 11th, Robert Piest went to meet with Gacy about a summer job. The prosecution case was that Gacy lured Robert to his home, where he entertained him with a set of trick handcuffs from his clown act. Once Robert was comfortable getting in and out of them, Gacy upped the ante. He cuffed Robert's hands behind his back and told him to try again. But this time, he adjusted the catch. Robert was trapped. He then tortured and sexually abused him and strangled him with a garrote. On March 7th, 1980, John Wayne Gacy is convicted on 33 counts of murder, including Robert Piest's. On May 10th, 1994, after years of appeals, Gacy is executed by lethal injection. Without the help of psychics Carol Broman and Dorothy Allison, one of America's worst serial killers may never have been stopped. And Robert Piest never found.
I thought my mom's contribution to the Piest case was that she pretty much solved it.
Actually, I became a believer in psychics. If you can give some form of comfort and peace to the family of someone who went missing, and you can do that by using a psychic, then you do it.
This time on Psychic Investigators, a young woman is abducted in broad daylight.
Where is she? Who has her?
Police think it could be murder,
There was blood on the handgun.
but no one knows for sure
You could hear the buzzing before we saw the flash.
until a psychic relives the crime.
That's when she leaped into my body. She was so terrified.
Will the psychic help to solve the mystery of what happened to the flower girl? Denton, Texas, on the outskirts of Dallas-Fort Worth, a university town. A town that likes to party, where booze and bars can sometimes mean trouble, like the trouble that erupted late afternoon, July 1st, 1996.
A girl that I know was kidnapped. Big white burly guy in a black late model Chevy pickup. You saw that? Yes. I took off with her. It's about 5 minutes ago.
You'd get calls like this basically every weekend when the bars were open to 2 a.m. in the morning. The two witnesses, patrolmen, saw that both of them had been drinking and didn't believe what they said and thought possibly that it was just a domestic disturbance.
The witnesses know the woman they saw kidnapped. She's 36-year-old Diana Goldston, a local photographer who also makes extra money selling roses in the clubs and bars around Denton. People call her the Flower Girl.
She would give her shirt off of her back to you if she felt you needed it more than she did.
Diana is also a part-time bartender at the Red Derby, the location of the abduction.
The owner of the Red Derby called and said that something had happened to my sister.
I got a call from my daughter. She said that Diana was taken from the street and kidnapped.
The witnesses gave the police the license plate number of the truck. They trace it to the address of Carrie Griffin, ex-wife of John Robert, J.R. Griffin, a known felon from California on parole.
Very, very strong, very muscular guy. He scared people.
A rookie detective is sent out to question J.R. Griffin's ex-wife. Carrie Griffin says that her ex-husband had been at the house on the day in question, and he had a woman with him. From Carrie's description, the detective assumes the woman is Diana Goldston.
Wrote in his report she was with J.R. Griffin and appeared okay.
Satisfied that it may be a simple domestic dispute, the police put the case to one side. But it was not okay. 10 days go by, and still no word from Diana. Her mother desperately wants answers.
They weren't taking it seriously, and I said, she's missing, she's gone. Something's wrong. Please help me.
The police revisit the case, and Detective Dave Stewart is put in charge.
They'd already started it in motion and talked to a few people, but then when I came in, we started having to interview all the other witnesses.
Also assigned to the case, Detective Kenny Kirkland re-interviews Carrie Griffin. His experience tells him she knows more than she's saying.
Indeed, that was not the whole truth, that there was more to the story.
Kirkland gets her to admit that she was scared of her ex-husband and that the woman with JR wasn't Diana Goldston, but his girlfriend, Jeanette Cox.
That Jeanette Cox was there with him, that Diana Goldston was not, and that J.R. Griffin had blood on him.
The story Carrie Griffin tells breaks the case wide open. Carrie Griffin says JR asked her neighbor for help. The truck was stuck at the lake. The lake is Lake Ray Roberts, a heavily wooded 6,000-acre state park just outside of Denton. What was JR doing up there? And why did he have blood on his shirt? The neighbor takes Kirkland to the spot where JR was stuck.
When we first walked up to the area, we could see a jacket hanging in a tree that had blood on it. We could see the trail where a body was dragged. You could hear the buzzing before we saw the flies. And the blowflies were just all on the top of it. They're also called death flies. There was a pool of blood and body fluids. There was lots of blood there.
The police bring in dogs trained at detecting human remains.
Cadaver dogs hit on that area that we were. They hit on the jacket.
They gather the evidence at Lake Ray Roberts and compare it to DNA from Diana Goldston.
We matched all of these things to the blood that was on the ground, to DNA that we had gathered from Diana Goldston's hair that she left in a brush at her house.
And it all matches.
We knew that that's where Diana had been before he moved her.
Even without her body, the police are now convinced the Flower Girl is dead.
I went out in my backyard and screamed and yelled and cried and talked to God. But it really didn't help. She was gone.
Warrants are issued. In J.R. Griffin's house, the police find a shotgun and a .38 revolver. Traces of blood are found on the revolver. In the pickup truck, the police also find trace elements of blood.
We were able to get DNA from that, which would match us up to Dinah Goldston.
In the state of Texas, without a body, police cannot lay a murder charge. But they do have enough evidence to charge J.R. Griffin and his girlfriend Jeanette Cox with aggravated kidnapping. But where is Diana Goldston? And what exactly happened to her? All of Denton wants to know. The police drag the lake. There's a massive ground search.
It was very emotional for the whole town as well as the police department. We wanted justice. All of us did. We left no stone unturned.
And still, nothing. Weeks, then 3 months go by, and with J.R. and his girlfriend not talking, the police are at a dead end. A colleague suggests a psychic who had worked with police in a nearby county.
Police officers are cynical by nature, and we don't believe anything that anybody tells us, much less a psychic that tells you things from the dead or from other places.
Despite his skepticism, the detective gives the psychic a call.
He wanted to know if I would be willing to work on this young woman who was missing. And he said, would you be willing to come to Denton, Texas?
Carol Pate has worked with police around the U.S. on many cases. She uses a method she calls psychometry.
That's holding an object, a photograph. It's kind of like tuning in a radio station for me. Once I've got that signature frequency of that individual, then I can become one with them. So I'm sort of them for that time frame. Then I can see and feel and know.
But will the psychic be able to see what happened to the flower girl?
Pretty much floored all of us. We were shocked. Thank you.
A woman abducted outside a Texas bar has been missing for weeks, presumed dead. Police bring in psychic Carol Pate from her home in Arkansas. Can she see what the police cannot?
We were very frustrated, but we needed some closure for the family and for us in the police department.
In the squad room, the detectives put the psychic to the test.
We did not give Carol Pate any information whatsoever. We figured if she was truly who she said she was, that she would be able to do these things. We got together several pictures, and some of them were people not involved in the crime, and some were people involved in it. We had not released any of the pictures of people in the press.
So I did each photograph. The girl was scared to death. She was murdered.
All of us in the room were silent.
This one is the murderer. He was heavy into drugs and that he had zero conscience, none. This one is his girlfriend. And she was there at the time of the murder.
We were shocked for the fact that she was able to take just pictures and tell us what each person did and what their part was in that crime. She just reaffirmed that. I don't know of anybody that can do that.
What else can the psychic see? Without telling her anything, Detective Kirkland drives Carol to the scene of the abduction, the parking lot of the Red Derby Bar.
This young girl, I saw her in front of a nightclub, and she sold flowers. This was where I felt a lot of violence here. This was where the abduction took place. He believed this girl had stolen money from him.
Where's my money?
She was so terrified. And then that's when she leaped into my body. I was going through the struggle that she was going through. and all of a sudden, I'm shot.
She said she could feel it, just like as if she was Diana Goldston. I can feel the searing heat. I can feel that I'm bleeding. That is a possibility. The two witnesses, I remembered that they said a shot had been fired, but no one had said that Diana Goldston was shot. We were going down toward the lake. As we drove by one area, she said, this part here has something to do with Diana Goldston.
Still channeling the spirit of Diana, the psychic calls out directions as she claims to relive Diana Goldston's last moments.
She's bleeding heavily, and I look to either side of me, and I see a woman, and I see a man to my left side, and these people are fighting her and holding her.
She said, I can feel what Diana Goldston feels. They're hitting me, and they're keeping me down, and I'm begging for my life.
And she said, turn to the right. Here, turn left.
She leads the detective to Lake Ray Roberts.
She said, this is where it occurred. This is where Diana Goldston lost her life. This lake is huge. Lake Ray Roberts is a big place. And to be able to narrow it down to one place, it's pretty astounding.
I feel the man and the girl taking her out of the truck. There's a jacket, and he takes it off, and he throws it on a limb in a tree.
Shocked that she was able to do that.
And I saw him dragging my body through the woods. And they just lay me down. And I guess they thought I was gonna just bleed to death there. And they walk away. And then I feel them coming back. And the man, he stomps my throat with his big boot. I die.
How could the psychic know so much? Carol Pate not only confirmed where police believe Diana Goldston died, but she offers insight into how she died.
I can't explain that.
Forensics have given some of the details in the case, but with J.R. Griffin and Jeanette Cox saying nothing, Carol Pate is the only one to paint a full picture of Diana's last moments alive.
Carol left me some drawings that depicted where she believed Diana Goldston had been taken and laid down a final resting place.
There was some graffiti close to a bridge, and the graffiti, that was done like in red. That S was like in red. And there was a cross, and then that Y, and there was this barrel, and I felt like she at one point was placed either in the barrel or around this barrel. Basically, when I draw these pictures, it's what I'm seeing in my head, what the picture that flashes in my head, period. and I try to transpose that picture in my head onto the piece of paper. And I try to get as much detail as possible.
But 5 months after the Flower Girl's abduction, there's still no sign of Diana's body. The trial of J.R. Griffin begins. He pleads not guilty.
He believed that the police could not touch him, that he was invincible, that nobody could get him. Everything that we gathered together was a circumstantial case, but it was a good enough case because we'd pieced it together.
Leanne Breeding is the prosecutor.
Our goal was to get him convicted and have him spend as much time in the penitentiary as the law allowed. Without a body, it's hard to prove an exact cause of death that stands up on appeal. And so you take the route where you think you have the better case for the evidence. In this case, it was the aggravated kidnapping.
To the end, J.R. Griffin maintains his innocence. But the jury finds him guilty, and he's sentenced to 40 years.
In Texas, juries decide the punishment. And for him to be sentenced to life imprisonment on an aggravated kidnapping case, that's the most he could get.
You know, instead of being just this flower girl that he swatted away, suddenly now she was important to the jury. And it was this one person he wasn't even afraid of and thought couldn't do anything that put him behind bars permanently.
We asked him again if he would just tell us where she was, that we would not pursue murder charges and he could not get the death penalty in the state of Texas. We wanted to find the body of Diana Goldston to add some closure to her family. And his response to myself and David Stewart at that time was that you'll never find the body of Diana Goldston.
With J.R. Griffin in prison and his girlfriend Jeanette Cox saying nothing while she awaits her trial, the police have only the visions of a psychic to explain how Diana died. But that was about to change.
I remembered what Carol Pate told me. I remembered it all. It indeed did come to be true.
In Denton, Texas, J.R. Griffin has been found guilty of the abduction of Diana Goldston. The police are sure she's dead, but J.R. won't reveal what happened or where her body is.
So about 3 o'clock, I wrote J.R. a letter while he was in prison to tell me what he did with Diana, and he wrote me an 11-page letter back, kind of called me a bunch of names, and keeps denying it. He won't talk about it. He keeps saying it's somebody else that did it.
I think J.R. Griffin is one of the most evil men you would ever meet. Any man that has the ability to put closure for a family and he just totally ignores them, he's evil.
I even wrote to Griffin in prison. In his letters to me, he said, I'll probably die in here, and I thought, good. He denied everything, saying his friend Cox knew more than she was telling.
Then, 2 years after the abduction, an unexpected development, and the mystery of how Diana died is finally solved. In exchange for a reduced sentence and no trial, Griffin's accomplice talks.
Jeanette told us everything that we didn't know because she was actually there. And she gave details that only a person that was present would know what happened.
So he was wanting to go to Denton and told me he had quite some money. And he just a couple days beforehand, he mentioned about someone stealing his wallet.
Hey, you, where's my money?
J.R. killed the wrong person because it was all over $400 that someone had taken out of his wallet. It wasn't Diane that stole the money, but she died as a result of something else that somebody else did.
Diana Goldston had never done anything to J.R. Griffin. She died for nothing.
And he just yanked her up and started shoving her towards the truck. At that time, I hear the gun go off, and I'm very scared. And he says, get her in the truck.
Get her in there. And my reaction was just that I've heard this before from Carol.
Shot. All I can't remember anymore of the trip because I'm struggling with her to keep her down. He's telling me to keep her down. I punched her once or twice, maybe 3 times.
I'd heard this also from Carol Pate. She told me this is what happened.
And then when he got to the lake where he dumped her,
I helped him lift her legs up. She's still breathing. I was walking back to the truck, and out the corner of my eye, I see him drag her up further under the tree area, and it looked like he stepped on her neck. Just kind of smashed it like a cigarette butt. And I acted like I didn't see him. I'm afraid.
What this does, it sets the wheels in motion. If we ever find Diana,
J.R. Griffin can and most likely will be tried for murder and be put to death.
But can she tell the police where to find Diana's body and seal J.R. Griffin's fate?
Do you have any idea where she may be?
No.
For making the deal, Jeanette Cox receives a sentence of 20 years in prison. Eerily, Jeanette's account closely mirrors the psychic's visions of the crime. And what about Carol Pate's drawings of Diana's burial place? Detective Kenny Kirkland is hopeful.
Carol Pate had gotten several things right in dealing with this case. And so I've kept those drawings, so when we do find the body, I want to be able to compare it to what Carol drew on this paper.
It is probably one of the harder things to do, is to locate a body, because that energy is dead. The physical energy is dead. So I'm having to pick up on the remnants of what was there psychically.
Carol Pate obviously has some special gifts to be able to do things that a normal person cannot do. She was able to tell us things about this case she knew nothing about. It was pretty phenomenal that she was able to do that.
For Detective Dave Stewart, the case never closed.
I need to find Diane before I retire. That is my one goal in life, I hope, as an officer, is to put this case to rest.
I would love for my mother and my daughter and me to have a place to go and pay our respects to her. That would be amazing.
I wanted a body, you know, I wanted a funeral. I wanted a place that I could go talk to her instead of her picture.
I feel Diana will eventually be found given time. I know that the family needs closure. They need to be able to say goodbye. And who knows, maybe I'll have a part in it.
This time on Psychic Investigators. A wealthy businesswoman vanishes on a shopping trip to Tucson.
We've seen a number of homicides, robberies, kidnappings.
Is it kidnapping or something else? The police have their suspicions, but no proof.
He was tall and handsome. He could talk snow off a snowflake, and he took over her life.
A psychic warns the police to act fast.
I just got a really, really bad feeling.
Or the truth could stay buried forever. Tucson, Arizona, 70 miles from the Mexican border. A city shaped by the surrounding desert. A dramatic backdrop to the story that was about to unfold on December 13th, 2004. At 6 p.m., 67-year-old Ta Benderly frantically approaches the security desk at Park Place Mall. His partner is missing. He tells the guards he dropped Loretta Bowersock off at Dillard's department store at 2 o'clock and arranged to pick her up at 4. He's been looking for her for the last 2 hours. The police are called, and Detective Fabian Pacheco is put in charge of the case.
Tucson, unfortunately, has seen its fair share of homicides, robberies, kidnappings. We do take each and every one of those investigations seriously.
Immediately, Pacheco recognizes the name of the missing woman. Loretta Bowersock and her daughter Terry own a successful chain of furniture stores. Their commercials have been on the air for 20 years.
Thanks to you and Ma, Terry's consignment furniture has expanded again. There's a beautiful Bernhardt sofa, and you saved $1,400.
Police kick the search into high gear.
They had searched all of the Dillard store to include the Park Place Mall, the surrounding neighborhoods, without any success.
At first, Pacheco wonders if Loretta may have been abducted for ransom. After all, she is a high-profile millionaire.
Todd Benderly made some indications regarding a possibility of Loretta being kidnapped by some individuals in a white van. And this information further heightened our response to this investigation.
Todd calls Loretta's daughter in Phoenix.
I jumped in my car and drove down to Tucson in 45 minutes, which is normally about an hour and a half. I just remember feeling very frantic. The fear of her being kidnapped was probably the worst for me. I started getting hold of all of the local newspaper because I'd been on the news a lot. And I got pictures of her off of Ta's computer, and we started making posters right away.
Terry and Loretta were like Arizona's success story. We had watched them grow up on television. They started their business together, the consignment business. They were in our living rooms for 20 years.
My mother was a very smart lady. She was very attractive, very talented, full of life.
For 18 years, Loretta has shared that life with Ta Benderly. The story Ta tells police is that they left Tempe, the Phoenix suburb where they live, that morning for a 5-day vacation. They checked into the Residence Inn in Tucson at 12:30 p.m. and went to the mall at 2 o'clock. Police check mall security cameras and make a startling discovery.
We saw that there was no Loretta to be found anywhere within that video.
Does that mean there's something wrong with Ta's story? Ta said he searched for Loretta in the mall for 2 hours.
The video surveillance actually shows them coming into the Dillard's department store and almost immediately going straight to the customer service counter and reporting her as a missing person.
Police get a search warrant for Ta's hotel room and ask Terry to look through her mother's belongings.
There was a lot of stuff all over the bed that he had taken down, guns and ammunition taken from my mother's house. There was a lot of valuables there. But I think probably the most crucial moment was when I saw the jewelry. That probably was the first moment where I thought this wasn't just kidnapping, this was something else.
But what? Police search his vehicle and make an incriminating find. A shovel and a pickaxe.
Those are red flags right away, especially looking at these tools that look like they have dirt and dust on them like they've been used.
Detective Pacheco contacts the police in Tempe. They get a warrant to search Ta and Loretta's home. And in the garage, another disturbing find. Detective Trent Luckow is with the Tempe police.
They found a van parked there, and in the back of the van they found a purse, and inside that purse there were credit cards and a checkbook and ID that all came back to Loretta Bowersock.
The purse, the pickaxe, the valuables, it all points to foul play.
Based on evidence that we had, we were confident that Loretta had never made it to Tucson.
Tucson police bring Ta in for questioning. He's defensive and, curiously, unconcerned about his missing partner.
You need to respect the fact that I'm trying to give you information in as clear a form as I can. I was not prepared to have to account minute for minute for my time.
Plain and simple is she never made it down here. This whole thing is gonna come down like a deck of cards.
The police believe they have a murder on their hands, but without a body, they cannot lay charges. They let Taw Benderly go and put him under surveillance. But Terry isn't content to just sit back and wait. She hears from a friend about a psychic who might be able to help. Mary Ann Morgan is a medium with international credentials and her own radio program.
I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, which means I talk to those on the other side. The capability of like jumping time with my mind, like look at everything on a TV screen and it plays out in front of me.
Terry calls Mary Ann at her home in Bethany, Oklahoma.
It's never easy when you tell somebody that they love has crossed over, especially when they've been murdered.
Arizona businesswoman Loretta Bowersock has been missing for 2 days when a psychic shares a devastating vision with the woman's daughter. Not only is she dead, she's been murdered.
I think that it took a little while for me to get through, and it was hard to hear those things.
Using her paranormal powers, Mary Ann Morgan claims to see Loretta's last moments.
I kept getting all these visions of screaming and yelling in a fight. And then I saw somebody coming up from behind and putting something over somebody's head. Then I saw somebody suffocating, fighting to save their life. And the more she fought, the worse it was. And then eventually there was just no life at all.
Then the killer appears before the psychic.
When I started seeing this man, I described him in depth and in detail to Terry, and she said, yes, this is the person that her mother had been involved with for a very long time. And I said, Terry, you don't know this man. This man has lied to you. He's got all kinds of money problems, all kinds of financial things that he's created. He's a con artist. And she understood that. However, she really didn't want to believe it.
And there's another psychic bombshell for Terry.
I saw Loretta Bowersock open the door and her be handed a set of papers, and I saw how angry she got, and I knew that the house was in foreclosure, and this was something that she had no idea about.
I said, that's crazy. There's no way that my mom would let her house go into foreclosure. She loved her house.
Could the psychic be right? Terry decides to tell the police about the foreclosure.
We don't use psychics. We're more into the modern forensics, the DNA, the fingerprinting, certain other things that we can do as homicide detectives. But psychics, I'd never used one. I was skeptical.
And I said, you know, all I know is there seemed to be some things that she described that seemed to be accurate. And with us not having any leads coming in, I said it really couldn't hurt.
We did a financial investigation, and that's where we realized this home was in foreclosure. Nobody knew that. That was really astounding, and began to think, well, maybe the psychic could be of service.
In the meantime, the police continue to pull apart Taw's alibi. Taw says he and Loretta left Tempe at 10 a.m. and checked into their Tucson hotel at 12:30. However, the desk clerk says he checked in at 2:48, alone. And his credit card and bank receipts also tell a different story. At 11 a.m., he used his credit card to buy 2 baseball caps at the outlet mall. And at 1:15, he bought 2 sandwiches at the truck stop, just 4 miles down the highway.
We are now faced with a 2-hour block of time that we're trying to determine where exactly was he. And it's very important to us to account for that time.
Police think that during that time, Taw was busy burying Loretta's body somewhere in the Sonoran Desert.
We were headed in a direction to prosecute Todd Benderly for the murder of Loretta Bowersock.
Then, an explosive turn of events. 1 week after Loretta's disappearance, the psychic has another revelation.
All of a sudden flashed before me this vision of Todd Benderly. And I just got a really, really bad feeling. Either this man's going to kill himself or he's going to try to escape.
The net is tightening. All the evidence of Loretta's disappearance points to Todd Benderly. The psychic immediately calls Detective Pacheco.
We were very concerned for Todd Benderly's welfare. Obviously, we don't want anyone to harm themselves. And most importantly, we still don't know where Loretta is. If something ever happens to Todd, the chances of finding Loretta are gone along with him.
At Mary Ann's insistence, the police check up on Todd. He seems fine. The next day, Terry calls Todd several times, but he doesn't answer. In a panic, she contacts the police.
At that point, police probably need to go out there and make sure that he's okay and that he's fine, or that he had not fled. When police entered the house, they found Todd hanging from an extension cord in the garage.
All Todd Benderly left was a suicide note saying he has gone to join Loretta, but nothing about how she died or where her body is located.
What a coward. Not only did this man kill himself, he took all the clues with him on where Loretta was. He never said, here's what I did and here's where she is. This SOB went to hell not telling anybody where Loretta was.
The psychic was dead right about Todd's suicide. But can she help to find Loretta Bowersock? Todd Benderly has taken the secret of Loretta Bowersock's burial place with him to the grave.
Knowing that he had just committed suicide, I lost all the hope of finding out really what happened, if he'd been the one that killed her, and where was she.
When I found out that Todd Benderly had committed suicide, I was thinking about what Mary Ann had told me. I was thinking, what else could we have done? Once the main suspect is dead, there's nobody to prosecute. The case is closed. The only thing left in this investigation to do is to find the remains of Loretta.
But where is she? 3 weeks after her disappearance, the police are no closer to finding her body.
I needed to know what had happened. You know, how was she killed? Was she shot? Was she cut up? Had he bashed her? When you don't have how somebody died, it just makes you crazy.
Desperate, Terry invites psychic Mary Ann Morgan to Tempe. Maybe she can see something the police have missed. They start in the place where Todd took his own life, the garage of Loretta and Todd's soon-to-be repossessed house.
We went out to the garage. A very, very cold entity came to be present with us. I said, Terry, Todd's here in the garage with us. And about that time, he jumped into my mind, and he started screaming. He says, she's in the desert. She's in the desert. I told you she's in the desert. It was just very powerful and overwhelming. I knew this was going to be very hard to tell Terry, but unfortunately, I saw her mother wrapped in plastic, almost mummified. And I saw her buried in a very shallow grave.
The desert, a likely place to dump a body. Police already suspect Todd has buried Loretta in the Sonoran, but the psychic sees specific, unique details.
I could see that there was blue. I felt like I was surrounded with blue. And then I heard children laughing. And I could see and I could hear children going around and around on a merry-go-round. So I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be the biggest, one of the biggest keys to this is that she is not even 150 yards from this merry-go-round.
A merry-go-round, the color blue. Mary Ann shares the details with the police, who have a lead of their own. Taw made a cell phone call around the time police think Loretta was buried. Detective Landon Rankin of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office led the search for Loretta Bowersock.
Mr. Benderly's cell phone had pinged on a certain cell phone tower in central Arizona in our jurisdiction of Pinal County.
The cell phone records show Taw had made a phone call at 12:30 in the Sonoran Desert, 94 miles from the hotel in Tucson, where he told police he was. And he had made that call during the 2-hour time gap that he couldn't account for.
I believe it was his dentist had called, so Mr. Benderly opened up his cell phone, returned the phone call. So that basically put his footprint in our area.
The police think Taw was burying Loretta's body in this area of the desert. But even with hundreds of volunteers, they're looking for a needle in a vast haystack.
People who ask the question, how hard is it to find a body in the desert, have never been to the desert. The desert is so enormous. I mean, even with clues, you can't find a body in the desert.
6 months pass, and there's no sign of Loretta. With limited resources, the police halt the search. But Terry Bowersock refuses to give up. For the next few months, each Saturday, locals and tourists alike scour the desert for Loretta Bowersock's body.
Every day that I'd be out searching, I remember I would just think of her and just how important it was not to spend the rest of my life wondering. I wasn't about to let her stay in the desert. That wasn't going to happen. I was going to find her.
Terry was searching every day. I finally just had to tell her that it was not her karma to find the body, that hikers were going to be in the desert about a year later from the time that she disappeared, and that they would come upon the body.
In January 2006, just 150 feet from an abandoned motel, a family out hiking stumbles on a human skull. Dental records confirm these are the remains of Loretta Bowersock.
The teeth that I had noticed had fillings. More specifically, was like I saw some porcelain veneers on her, sort of her front teeth.
When I was told that she was finally found, it was like, oh, thank God. It was a relief to know, I could stop chasing. I did need to have closure. It was amazing when I drove out there. There was a blue motel. It's like when you got there, you went, how did we not see this much blue somewhere? But we stopped just short of that, 5 miles, before that area.
An autopsy reveals the actual cause of death, asphyxiation by a plastic bag.
When I was first at scene and saw the plastic, I thought it might have been just skin. But we went to the autopsy and it saw that the plastic bag was completely over her head. It came full circle with Mary Ann's prediction. It was exactly as she had said.
The police reconstruct Loretta's last hours alive. On December 13th, Loretta discovers the foreclosure notice on the house. At 3:33, she makes the first of 17 phone calls to the bank. They confirm her worst fears. Her partner of 18 years has been embezzling the mortgage payments. When she confronts Taw, he panics, fearing his web of lies is about to be exposed. He sneaks up behind her, places a plastic bag over her head, and suffocates her, just as the psychic predicted.
After being involved in this case, I can say that definitely I'm less skeptical of employing the services of a psychic.
I've never used a psychic until this, but the information she gave was pinpoint accurate. A psychic gives us insights that we don't have.
When this case came to a close and I got the phone call that they had found Loretta Bowersock, it was just a sigh of relief that it was finally over.
Ta Benderly was never tried for the murder of Loretta Bowersock. A dead man can't be put on trial.
I felt so bad that I hadn't done something, to rescue her. I hadn't taken her out of the house earlier. I've learned there's a lot of women out there that are lonely and desperate for love. And that, unfortunately, there's men that will take advantage of that. And so I would just simply say to women, if you feel like there's something wrong with the person you're with and you haven't checked them out, do.
This time on Psychic Investigators, a young mother vanishes.
Send me a sign. Where are you?
And the police can't find her.
No leads came, nothing.
Until a psychic tunes into her spirit.
Little blips of things that were coming through.
And claims to see what no one else can.
Could feel her getting dizzy, heart fluttering.
But are his visions too late?
I didn't feel she was alive.
Is the damage already done?
Wasn't adding up.
People involved, they got away with something.
In the shadow of New York City sits Sayreville, New Jersey. Once an industrial powerhouse, by 1996, a bedroom community. Not only do commuters cross the bridge from the big city, but drugs and the damage they do also make their way to Sayreville. On June 1st, 22-year-old single mom Nicole Roas heads out for a night on the town with friends. The former NYU student lives at home with her parents, leaving her 16-month-old daughter Dylan in their care.
She was a good mother. I thought, oh, she's going to be asking me to babysit all the time. And I was just out of all that stuff. And I only had one child, and I didn't want to get back into that. And she didn't. Maybe once a month, she'd ask me to babysit. And always after Dylan was already sleeping at night.
But when Nicole fails to return home that night, her parents know something is very wrong. Recently, Nicole has been hanging out with a bad crowd, with a taste for booze and drugs.
I knew that if she didn't come home and didn't let us know something was wrong, that she couldn't.
The next morning, Nicole's father, Jerry, now deceased, heads straight to the Sayreville police to file a missing persons report. Detective Jim Novak is put in charge of the case.
Parents know if something's really wrong with their child. So what do you think? Mr. Roas came out and said that I think she's dead.
Before you suspect foul play, you try and rule out all of the other common things that normally you find in a missing persons case, especially an adult. There's really no crime to be a missing person.
A description of Nicole and her vehicle, a black 1980 Chevy Malibu, are fed into the National Crime Information Computer System.
To see if any other police department in the United States ever had contact with that license plate. and there was no one that ran her license plate, or her car wasn't found somewhere and run by the police.
Jerry Arokas gives Detective Novak details about his daughter. She didn't like to drive her own car, especially at night. And he wasn't too fond of her choice of friends.
He didn't particularly care for her boyfriend, Michael Reed.
Detective Novak knows Mike Reed. Reed is a suspect in a recent string of car burglaries.
I always thought he was the best liar I've ever met. He would lie to me and smile as he did it. It was almost like Charles Manson type thing.
But her father's biggest fear is that his daughter's recent drug habit, heroin, might have something to do with her disappearance. Detectives start by interviewing some of Nicole's friends, Eric Nordling, Todd Connors, and Mike Reed.
Detectives went into the house to check the house for Nicole. Other detectives interviewed the three occupants, Eric, Todd, and Michael.
And everyone denied having any further contact other than seeing Nicole leave that night to go what they called out to several bars to do some drinking.
As we were leaving, Michael called to me. He said, Mr. Novak, I want you to know, I didn't love Nicole. We were only friends. I looked at Detective Sergeant Sprague, and simultaneously we said to each other, she's dead. And the reason we felt that way is because he used the past tense, and there was no reason at this point to think of Nicole as anything else than in the present. Unless there was.
But what? There's no evidence to back up a feeling. They continue to pursue the missing persons case, contacting local hospitals, checking towing reports, and connecting with state police. 2 days go by, and there is no sign of Nicole or her car.
At this point in the investigation, we had no leads.
Once you don't come home for a number of days and no one hears from you for a number of days, now this person is really maybe not just a missing person on their own account, but maybe in fact some kind of foul play may have occurred here.
I would go out on the back porch every night and just look around and say, just send me a sign, something. Where are you? I know you're out here somewhere.
Desperate for any answers, the family is willing to try anything.
My uncle Walt Werner worked for the Hackensack Police Department, and he suggested a psychic that the police force sometimes used.
Frank St. James lives in New Jersey and has a reputation for finding missing persons.
I'm like a human satellite or something, going anywhere. Little blips of things I could draw in, get real close. Sometimes they come really quick in flashes. It's like looking through their eyes.
But his one rule? No immediate family members in the session. Diane Macaluso, Pat Arokas' best friend, goes in her place.
My husband and I took a tape recorder with us to record the session, and we took a picture of Nicole with us.
And what the picture shows him, no one really wants to hear.
I tell you, I don't have a good feeling about it. She did expire sometime Sunday morning.
Single mother Nicole Arokas of Sayreville, New Jersey has been missing for 3 days. Psychic Frank St. James says she's dead.
She did expire sometime Sunday morning.
Oh, my heart sank when I heard that because I was still hoping that maybe she just went off with friends.
The psychic claims to be picking up images of Nicole from the night she went out with friends.
I pick up some drugs Saturday. The turnpike is off of there on one of those little side roads. She's not moving. She's not too far from home. I do feel something by Thursday.
Is the psychic right? Will they find Nicole by Thursday?
I didn't have hope that she was alive. I knew that when she didn't contact us and didn't come home, I knew it. But I just had to find her.
The Arokas invite the psychic to their home. Maybe here he can get a clearer picture of where their daughter might be. Left alone, he moves through the house. It's in the kitchen where Frank claims to connect with Nicole's spirit.
Nicole started to come through really easy. It looked like I was flying up above, near water, a dirt road, bridges, cattails, or her car in the marsh. One of the wheels was in the water. A feeling of closed in. I felt that if I was standing 25 feet away from where she was, I wouldn't be able to see her. I couldn't see it from the road. The only way is from above.
Nicole's father takes the tape of both psychic sessions to Detective Novak. The investigator is skeptical, but he's also reached a dead end.
I am not so naive to think that just because I don't have this special ability doesn't mean it wasn't given to someone else. No leads came, nothing. And it's not like we sat on our hands. I thought it doesn't hurt. Began checking all the areas that would resemble areas described by the psychic. There was an old railroad bridge, area where it was tall cattails, area where it was marshy land, ponds, lakes. We came up negative.
And then the detective remembers something else the psychic had said.
Have they tried a helicopter in any of those particular areas?
We're only 3 days into the investigation at this point, and I'm going to ask for a helicopter, because I felt I was going to meet with the resistance.
But the next day, Novak gets his helicopter. It's Thursday, June the 6th.
One of the pilots asked why we're using the state police helicopter. And I said, well, we're following the leads of a psychic with respect to a missing person. I'm saying to myself, oh, please, God, please let us find something. Because if we don't, I am never going to live this down.
5 minutes later, above a secluded marshy area, very similar to what the psychic visualized, they do spot something.
The pilot asked what type of vehicle we were looking for, and I explained to him it was a black Chevy we were looking for. At that point, he said, I think I see something down in the weeds right along the Raritan Bay. As the helicopter made several circles above it to find a landing spot where we could land the helicopter, you could see that there was, in fact, someone inside the vehicle.
But what they see from the air is not so easy to see on the ground.
Well, it was necessary to land on the beach area because of the tall cattails and debris. It was a landfill, maybe a mile square, just covered with cattails. You couldn't see anything. We each went in different directions, and as I approached this one curve, I was surprised because suddenly I saw the car. Maybe 25 feet from the curve. The psychic indicated that you could be 25 feet from the car and not see it.
The psychic had also said that he had a bad feeling about Nicole, that she was dead.
Look in and I see the remains of what appeared to be a female. I noticed the position of her body. Car doors were locked. I radioed in the registration, confirmed that it was in fact Nicole's car.
Once we opened the door of the vehicle, she didn't appear to be seated behind the driver's seat, that she happened to be more in the center of the vehicle between the driver's and the passenger side. that the vehicle was still in gear and the ignition wasn't all the way on.
Inside, police find a letter in Nicole's purse, dated June 1st, the night she disappeared.
That appeared to be a semi-suicide note. Yet, there was no evidence that a suicide had occurred here.
I remember being happy that they found her. But it was like I wanted to pass out and I couldn't. I was like halfway, but you know.
My heart just ached for Pat and Jerry and Dylan.
The autopsy finds the cause of death, acute morphine toxicity, a heroin overdose. The county prosecutor rules her death a suicide, but was it?
It didn't make any sense to me that she would do that.
It doesn't add up for the detectives either. First, there's Nicole's letter found in her purse.
The ink on a date was a different color than the body of the letter, and I thought that was strange.
Her mother confirms that Nicole often recorded her feelings, however dark.
Nothing that went through her mind wasn't written down somewhere. Because she was living a dangerous life, and in case something happened, she wanted to make sure that people knew things, especially Dylan.
Then, the location of the car.
And I kept in mind what Nicole's father had told me. She didn't like driving at night, and she would have to drive over discarded railroad ties and roofing material that was discarded in the area. There was no way that Nicole drove herself to this particular location, especially at night. Somebody had to have driven her car there.
And some of the things that really stood out were what wasn't there. No drug paraphernalia, there was no needles, no syringes, other than a ligature on the floor.
And then Detective Novak remembers what the psychic said on the tape. Nicole was not alone when she died.
There's at least 2 or 3 of them. They were there. They know what happened.
There was more to this than suicide.
"22-year-old Nicole Roas has been found dead inside her car, abandoned in a secluded New Jersey marsh. It's ruled a suicide, but a psychic says others were involved, and the lead detective thinks so too.
Anyone reading that letter could easily draw the logical conclusion that this was a suicide. However, they didn't have the information that I had. Her boyfriend, on the first day of the investigation, referred to Nicole in the past tense. The position of her body, the fact that the car was locked.
Most families, once a loved one commits suicide, kind of realize after looking back that the signs of suicide were there. They were depressed or they were having some type of problem. The parents were pretty insistent that they didn't believe that Nicole had taken her own life. And if she did in fact do that, then the crime scene would have been totally different. Usually when you die from a heroin overdose, the death is pretty instantaneous to the injection. There isn't time to remove the syringe from the vehicle, clean up the papers, dust off the dashboard, and make the car kind of neat. If you're going to inject yourself, you probably would have the car in park. The vehicle had actually been left in gear. If she had been, say, trying to leave the scene and all of a sudden the overdose kicked in and killed her, then that vehicle would have run out of gas before the police found her. Yet once we put the vehicle in neutral and turned the key on, it started right up. The suicide note was folded up in her pocketbook. You would probably leave it out in the vehicle. So everything that seemed to be a suicide just didn't seem to be adding up.
If she didn't commit suicide, how did she die? Novak suspects Todd Connors, Eric Nordling, and her boyfriend, Mike Reed.
Couldn't imagine why people I suspected would do such a thing to a friend.
For the detectives, there seems to be only one answer.
Under New Jersey law, if you cause someone's death by giving them a narcotic, it's technically a homicide.
I brought in the people involved. Got nowhere.
The case is officially closed, but for Novak, it's still open.
Sometimes it's better to take a step back, let the people involved come to the belief that they got away with something, and they begin to talk and tell friends.
Over the next 3 months, his strategy starts to pay off.
Just as much as I was repulsed by what had happened to Nicole, the friends of Eric, Todd, and Mike Reed were just as repulsed, because we began getting information through informants with respect to what is being said. Mike Reed shot up Nicole, and she OD'd, and he dumped her out in the landfill.
That information wouldn't have been admissible in court because it's hearsay.
To have any chance of charging Mike Reed, they need confessions from the people who were with Nicole when she died. They keep waiting.
After the call was processed at police headquarters, it was parked outside for the longest period of time. And every time I left police headquarters, I would look over at the car and I would say, "Come on, Nicole, help me out here." I repeated that probably 100 times.
For the next 3 months, the case eats away at the detective until one December night.
I was serving warrants at an apartment complex, totally unrelated to this, and I find this necklace. It was a child's necklace, the name Nicole.
Although it's not Nicole's necklace, the detective sees it as a sign.
And I thought, this is Nicole's response to me. Maybe it's time that I bring these people in and talk to them again.
But Mike Reed is in jail on an unrelated charge. So Novak brings in his friends, Eric Nordling and Todd Connors.
Eric was the first one to go in because we felt he was the weakest link. Sergeant Burns made Eric aware that he was familiar with Eric's family. His family would be disappointed with what they had done with Nicole. At that point, Eric tears up. Eric began to tell.
But Todd Connors admits to nothing.
I just confronted him. I yelled at him. "This is what you do to her? You leave her there and rot?" And he just looked away. We knew he had him. But he said he didn't want to talk anymore.
Novak needs statements from both Connors and Nordling in order to charge Mike Reed with Nicole's death. A few weeks later, he gets his chance. He brings Todd Connors in on a contempt of court warrant from a nearby town. But this time, he ups the ante. Novak brings in an investigator from the county prosecutor's office. She threatens to charge Connors with obstruction if he doesn't talk. It's Connors' last chance, and it works. Todd finally corroborates what Eric Nordling has already admitted, and what the psychic saw 6 months earlier, that Nicole was not alone when she died. According to their statements, around 8 p.m. on June 1st, 1996, Nicole, Todd, Eric, and Mike Reed head out to buy drugs. A half hour later in Perth Amboy, Nicole cashes her welfare check. At 9 p.m. in Newark, Mike Reed buys heroin. At a rest stop off the Garden State Parkway, Eric and Todd shoot up. Mike Reed shoots up Nicole. Todd and Eric fall asleep. When they come to, they're at the landfill, and Nicole is unconscious. Unable to revive her, they panic. But Mike Reed shows them the letter, the one the police initially took as a suicide note. He wipes down the car, removes all the evidence, and locks the doors. All three walk the 2 miles back to Todd Connors' house.
She would have never done that to them. That's what bothered me. Never. Even if she had to be found guilty, she would have never done that.
On December 16, 1996, Michael Reed is charged with the drug-induced death of Nicole Roas. He pleads guilty and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. Todd Connors and Eric Nordling walk free. Obstruction charges against them are dropped in exchange for their statements.
We had nothing. We found Nicole based on the information supplied to us by the psychic, Frank St. James. And that's it. It's just, I don't see how anyone could dispute it.
I can't explain it, nor would I even attempt to. I would certainly not have a problem with talking to a psychic or talking to the devil himself if it would help us solve some of our unsolved crimes.
I've done hundreds of cases. This was particularly gratifying, I guess, too, and sad at the same time, but I felt I helped the family at least.
Nothing goes right forever. There's no closure. You never see them again. She didn't have a normal funeral. None of it was the same. Everything was messed up.
This time on Psychic Investigators. In Maryland, a promising young Harvard grad vanishes.
This 23-year-old woman had just disappeared.
Everyone fears the worst.
We have a pillowcase that came from our house, stained in blood. And right away, you know that something bad has happened here.
Then a psychic's cryptic visions open the door.
The person that I envisioned absolutely hated Laura.
To a world of insanity and terror.
It is the strangest, most bizarre case that I have ever worked on.
Bethesda, Maryland, an affluent suburb just minutes from Washington, D.C. Home to movers and shakers, professionals and politicians. Home to 23-year-old Harvard graduate Laura Hotling, who's just moved back in with her mother and landed a job at a PR firm. But on the morning of October 19th, 1992, Laura doesn't show up at work. Her co-workers call. No reply. One of them is a good friend. Concerned, she phones Laura's brother.
Laura was extremely responsible, and she was very considerate, so she would have called, and I was quite sure of that. I knew something was strange.
Warren Hotling, a teacher, heads over to his mother's house to check. His sister isn't home. By nightfall, there's still no sign of Laura. Increasingly worried, he calls the police. Sergeant Rich Fallon was on duty that night.
The police took the report, and nothing was done for at least a day. You give them 24, 48 hours to show back up, then after that, you start getting concerned.
Their mother, Penny Hotling, is away at a conference. When Warren calls her, she cuts her trip short and returns home.
Because the police weren't able to do anything, we wanted to do something. We were convinced that there was something going on, there was something wrong. And so a lot of Laura's friends got real active. They put together a poster. It was very important to us to try to get, information out there so we could find something out.
Laura Hotling's disappearance is big news in Bethesda.
In the upper crust homes, a crime or a missing person is rare, especially in a family like the Hotlings, where you have a daughter who went to Harvard, the mother is a psychotherapist. Crimes like that just don't happen in those kind of families.
Adrian Havel writes about the story.
Laura was virtually the all-American girl. She had everything going for her.
She was very accomplished, a fantastic student. She was 6 feet tall, very long-limbed, and she had a really sweet smile.
After 2 days, there's still no word from Laura. The police launch a full-scale investigation, starting at her home.
There was nothing suspicious, nothing unusual, nothing disturbed in the house. Didn't appear to be any break-in.
The police canvass the neighborhood. Curiously, a neighbor's nanny tells them she saw the tall, slim blonde leaving for work at 8 a.m.
She said every day, Laura comes out of the house and waves to the children and her. And this day before, Laura had walked out of the house She was wearing a trench coat and slacks, and nothing seemed unusual except for the fact that she didn't wave.
If Laura left home at 8 that morning, where is she now?
It really was baffling because this 23-year-old woman had just disappeared.
Harry Gearing handled the press for the Montgomery County Police.
You have to keep your mind wide open to any possibility. Did she have a boyfriend? Did she have some reason to run away? Was she running away from something? So you have to ask some difficult questions.
It was very, very uncomfortable to not know what was going on. Part of you says, don't make things up. All we know right now is we don't know where she is. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I didn't have any kind of explanation. And so that was frightening.
Police interview friends and family. They search local fields and woods. Then, 4 days after Laura's disappearance, a discovery that throws the investigation in a whole new direction. Half a mile from Laura's house, cadaver dogs uncover a bloody pillowcase.
The blood-stained pillowcase was not just your average kind. This was a high-dollar pillowcase. The normal person wouldn't have this in their house.
The police match the pillowcase to the linens at the Hotling home and send it to forensics.
This is still a missing person case officially because you still don't have concrete evidence to suggest that there's been a murder. But when you have bloody evidence, it really is very strongly suggesting foul play.
That was kind of a confirmation for me that something bad had happened, which I already felt pretty strongly was the case at the time. In fact, I remember it was a point of conflict with the police about what kind of investigation it was, whether it was a missing persons investigation or a homicide investigation.
The Bethesda community at first was more puzzled than fearful. But when reports began to show up on television about not only Laura being missing, but police crews finding blood, then they began to get worried.
4 days after she vanished, the blood-drenched pillowcase suggests something terrible has happened to Laura Hotling. But what? A local psychic, famous for locating the missing, claims she can help.
This psychic was known to the police because she helped us out in a previous case. I think it was in 1991. We had a police dog go on missing. And with the psychic's help, the officers were able to recover that dog. So when she approached us with information about the Laura Hotling case, I think the officers were willing to listen.
The picture I was seeing was of a woman, but her energy was very masculine. The person that I envisioned was very jealous of Laura, very jealous.
A week after 23-year-old Laura Hotling vanishes from her Maryland home, police have no idea whether she's alive or dead. A psychic offers to help. Deborah Heinecker claims to read energy from photographs and personal objects to help locate the missing.
I call it tuning in, and I basically remove everything from my mind, make my mind a blank slate, and then I focus on whatever it is.
A police officer agrees to meet with the psychic to discuss the case. While holding the missing persons poster, the psychic sees a puzzling image.
I got a vision of someone in my mind. It was a woman, but it was very strange to me because she had a male energy, and the male energy was very strong, and I found that very confusing. The person absolutely hated Laura, and actually this person was very jealous of Laura, very jealous. I had visions of the person wrapping Laura in what looked to me to be a sheet or a comforter, and I felt that the person changed into Laura's clothes and carried her out. At that point, I felt relatively sure that Laura was no longer alive.
A woman with a man's energy, intense jealousy, and murder. Detectives agree Laura might be dead, but they're mystified by the psychic's strange visions.
Basically, what is that? What's a woman with a man's energy? And it really didn't fit in because we didn't believe it was a woman that did this. We believe it was a man that did this.
As the investigation gathers speed, lab testing confirms that it's Laura's blood on the pillowcase recovered in the woods.
That would indicate that something must have happened in the bedroom. So we then went into Laura's house and we stripped down the bed. And her mother mentioned that these sheets that are on the bed don't belong on this bed. These are for the guest bedroom. And there was no mattress pad. And we examined that mattress and there was no sign of blood.
Police opt to use a new chemical to look for blood.
Luminol reacts with the hemoglobin in the blood, and it becomes luminescent. They sprayed it, turned out the lights, and that mattress glowed.
And it was like the 4th of July. All of this blood suddenly appeared, and we couldn't see it because the suspect had cleaned it up.
The police are now almost certain that Laura is dead, just as the psychic predicted.
What was told to us was that there was blood on the mattress, and there was enough blood that a person could not have survived losing that much blood. So that was a confirmation that she was dead.
In all likelihood, Laura did not leave her home alive.
The idea that she had come out the next morning and was walking down the street did not match at all.
The neighbor's nanny, who said she saw Laura leave at 8 a.m., the morning of her disappearance, was clearly mistaken. But if it wasn't Laura, who was it?
You have a prominent young woman murdered in her home, so presumably there's a killer running loose. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure to find out who did it and catch him.
The police look again at everyone who might have seen Laura.
I talked to the mother, asking her about who hangs around here, who are her friends, and Laura Hotling's mother said, well, we can check with Haden Clark.
Haden Clark is the family gardener, a homeless man roughing it in the woods outside Bethesda. Laura's mother hired Haden through a church rehab program and wants the police to leave him alone.
She said, he has psychological problems. I'm sure it's not him. He is not a violent person, and I would prefer that you not even think of him as a suspect.
Back at the station, Fallon briefs his superiors. The name Haden Clark has a surprising effect on his captain.
And he immediately just said, oh my God.
Haden Clark has a dark and twisted past. He's a paranoid schizophrenic with a string of disturbing arrests, including malicious destruction of property and theft. Worse, he was a suspect in the still unsolved disappearance of a little girl in Silver Spring, Maryland.
We brought in and talked to detectives that had interviewed him years before, and they told us, hey, look, you know, this guy is strange. I mean, he is odd, and he's very capable of doing this.
With the gardener now their #1 suspect, police start following Haden Clark. But they can't arrest him. They don't have enough evidence to tie him to Laura's disappearance.
There was a point at which the police were suspicious of Haden, and we were resistant to that, actually. We thought, oh, it could be Haden. He's harmless.
And we caught holy hell over it. Laura Hotling's mother was furious that we were focusing in on him. It's not fair. He's a very gentle person. The minister at the church was furious and said, leave this man alone. Homeless advocates were calling the police department and raising hell that we were looking at this homeless man.
But then, more lab testing on the pillowcase reveals something highly incriminating. An impression of Haden Clark's thumbprint in Laura Hotling's blood.
And our lieutenant at that time said, notify patrol throughout the county. We want this guy. Find him.
With this new evidence, the police arrest the gardener on suspicion of murdering the Ivy League grad.
We trusted Haden, and we found out that that trust was misplaced. And that was very difficult.
But the question remains, where is Laura? 23-year-old Harvard grad Laura Hotling is set for a Washington law career when she disappears under suspicious circumstances. The family gardener, Haden Clark, has been charged with her murder, but says nothing.
We have a bloody fingerprint and no body, and it's basically a circumstantial case. So there's people saying you don't have enough to get a conviction, we need to release him.
At the bond hearing, prosecutors argue to keep Haden Clark behind bars while they gather more evidence.
For me, what was wrong was that I didn't know what had happened to her, and arresting him didn't answer the question. There was what people thought had happened, but we didn't know where she was.
The police ramp up their search.
Montgomery County homicide detectives have drained ponds. They have dug into the earth. They have listened to psychics. They have done so, of course, to find Laura Hotling's body.
But nothing. Months go by. Haden Clark's in custody, but still not talking.
To me, it was a paralyzing experience. I felt very helpless. I knew the police were doing what they could do, and you were just kind of waiting.
We knew in our hearts that Haden Clark had murdered Laura. Proving it was going to be hard. We traveled up to Block Island, we went to Rhode Island, we went all over the place, anywhere he had been, and we were having a very, very hard time getting the evidence that we needed to close this case, and it was very difficult.
Police are at a dead end, but psychic Deborah Heinecker thinks she knows exactly where Laura is buried.
I felt it was relatively close to the campsite, and she was in a shallow grave in mucky, sort of peaty soil. Her nose was partially exposed, and maybe parts of her cheek and maybe a little of her forehead.
But the police aren't buying it. They've already searched around Haden Clark's makeshift campsite repeatedly.
You're always going to have skeptics in the police. We're skeptical by nature, and the Montgomery County Police had searched that area over and over again, and they didn't believe that the body was there. But Deborah insisted to the police that they keep looking.
On June 13th, 1993, 8 months after Laura vanished, a startling turn of events.
Right the day before trial, the scientist has to review all of her findings. She looked at the hairbrush that had belonged to Laura Hotling and saw something odd and took off a strand of what she thought was hair that just didn't look quite like the others, and examined it, and it was a hair or fiber, as you might say, off a wig.
This lone fiber may be the final piece of the puzzle. An earlier search turned up a bizarre storage locker rented by Haden Clark.
We went in, and it was stacked with plastic containers. There were high heels, there was ladies' underwear, ladies' dresses, there were wigs. Just the place was full of female clothing. Then we realized that Haden was a cross-dresser.
Deborah Heinecker's vision begins to make sense.
I had the light bulb moment and said, oh, yes, that's what I had to have been feeling when I envisioned this person, but with a male energy.
The crime lab makes a positive match. Faced with the damning evidence that puts him at the murder scene, Haden Clark confesses. In a dramatic twist, the next day the gardener agrees to lead police to Laura's body in exchange for a plea bargain. He takes them to the wooded area surrounding his camp near Bethesda. There, they make a grim discovery. Buried in a shallow grave, they find the remains of Laura Hotling.
It had been several months. The rains had washed up part of her body so that part of her body was now exposed and out of the ground.
It's just as the psychic had insisted all along.
Deborah's description of the grave site was very close to what it was. I mean, it was excellent.
Some of the police officers were surprised when Laura's body was found in that location because we thought we did a thorough search. We didn't see anybody there. So it's a mystery to me.
Being able to say I know something about where she is was very helpful for us in terms of having some chance at some kind of a closure and not just not knowing. The not knowing was very hard.
The man who killed Warren's sister had a troubled past.
Haden Clark had a terrible childhood. His mother dressed him in women's clothes, or little girls' clothes, I should say, from the time he could walk.
We later learned that he liked to kill small animals.
He would shoot cats, kill dogs, put them on the neighborhood's doorstep if the neighbor crossed him.
This is the kind of person he is.
Little did Laura's mother know that the man she hired to help in her garden was a born killer. But why Laura?
Penny Hotling may have treated Haden Clark, her gardener, her handyman, a lot like a son who came around and did odd jobs.
Haden had become attached to Mrs. Hotling, thinking that, she was like a mother figure. What came up is that Laura had just recently returned from Harvard and had moved into the house.
He began to think of Laura as usurping him in the household. She was replacing him. Haden may have thought Penny Hotling was his mother, but she wasn't. He was really, when it came down to it, the gardener and the handyman. And a rage did build up inside him, I believe.
With Haden's confession, a full picture of a savage crime is finally revealed. In the early morning hours of October 19th, Haden Clark let himself into the Hotling house. Wearing a blonde wig, he entered Laura's bedroom and woke her up.
She must have been in total terror when she saw him there, especially since he was wearing a wig.
Clark then bound her limbs with duct tape and suffocated her on the bed. He slashed her throat, rolled her up in the bloody bed sheets, and then stashed her body in his truck.
Then he came back to the house, cleaned up, replaced the sheets, made it look as normal as he could.
Haden Clark then climbed into the bed, his transformation complete.
The next morning, he put on the wig and used her hairbrush to brush his hair, where we got the fiber from the wig.
At 8 a.m., he left the house with Laura's briefcase, dressed as a woman and wearing a wig. That's who the neighbor's nanny saw leaving. Later that same night, Haden Clark buried Laura Hotling across the highway from his campsite.
For me, sadness was the predominant emotion at the time. And disbelief. Murder doesn't happen to people that I know. It doesn't happen to people I care about. And life isn't supposed to be this way. That was all changed for me.
With his plea of guilty to second-degree murder accepted,
Haden Clark was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder of Laura Hotling. He later leads police to the remains of Michelle Dorr, the little girl he was suspected of murdering. He claims to have killed others, whose bodies have never been recovered. But the police have recovered Haden's stash of trophies, including Laura Hotling's high school ring.
It is the strangest, most bizarre murder case that I have ever worked on.
The psychic in this case helped us out, so I'm open to using psychics. If she can help me, I'm very glad to take her help to help me close cases.
I don't think I fully appreciated the impact Laura had on other people's lives until she died. For her memorial service, it was a spectacular group of people, and they really, really loved my sister. And I was very touched by that. She's a beautiful person, and I miss her. I miss her.